Hello students. I'm sorry I had to change the day that we did our video recordings, but I'm here and today is Thursday and I will have our next video recording on Saturday. So let's start off by saying I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving break and I hope you didn't eat too much, but you had a great time. Okay. So today we're going to be going over chapters 7 and 8 material, and we're going to start, of course, with chapter 7. And chapter 7 goes over all the basic information for all types of interviews. So we're basically going to go over the interview types and also the phases that happen during an interview. So first, let's go over the interview types. There are 10 common types, as you can see, but I'm only going to discuss the group, the informational, and the telephone Skype. Those are the ones I'm going to discuss in detail. So first, let's go over what happens during a group interview. In a group interview, you basically, as it states, will be interviewed by a group of people. So be prepared, because a lot of times there's a lot of noise because there's not just one person, but it could be as many as 10 people or as few as 2 to 3 people. But either way, it's going to be a group of people. Make sure that you try to make eye contact with everyone in the group and always speak first. Don't always speak first, but make sure that you show that you are listening and definitely that you are involved. Try to appear confident and in control. Make your answers brief, honest, and sincere. So those are ways that you can prepare for a group interview, and this is the process that happens during a group interview. Like I said, you're going to be interviewed by a group of people. Also, there's another type of interview, and it's called the informational interview. With the informational interview, basically, you're trying to obtain information from the person that you're interviewing. So plan ahead and also plan the questions that you want to ask. And definitely follow the basic interview organizations and take minimal notes, ask follow-up questions, make sure that you show that you're listening, and then after it's all over, send a thank you note, which is very appropriate, and we will talk about that in the next chapter when we discuss more basic things that go into interviews. The last type of interview that I want us to discuss is the telephone Skype interview. That is because that is becoming more prevalent and is also more of a choice. Don't necessarily have to fly to where the person is, per se. You can do it by telephone. You can also do it by Skype. Sometimes you can even do it by video chat, where there's more than one person in the room and they can do a group interview. So those are the types of things that happen when you have the telephone or Skype interview. Make sure that you always practice ahead using the technology so that you don't feel like, oh my gosh, how do you start this? Practice with that particular technology so you're familiar with it. Make sure that you remove as much clutter as you can and dress professionally. If you're going to be doing the Skype or video interview, make sure that you definitely check out the company website so you know what kind of questions to ask. Refer to the company by name, which is very important, and make comments that are positive, clear, and also very brief. Now let's go over the interview phases. There are basically 3 phases that happen during an interview. There's the open phase, the question response phase, and then the closing phase. During the opening phase, make sure that you include steps like building a rapport, getting to know each other, the orientation to verify basic information, and then motivation to answer questions as honestly and avoid false modesty. So basically that all happens in the opening phase of the interview. Basically, you're just trying to get to know each other and you're asking very basic questions. The next phase is the question phase. And this is the phase that you should definitely try to think of it as a conversation between friends. All the participants should be carefully prepared. And of course, before the interview, you want to decide what kind of information you want to see. Make sure that you only ask lawful questions. And you should also, as an interviewee, you should anticipate questions and possible answers to showcase your abilities. So make sure, basically what I'm trying to say is that for the question phase, you should definitely always be prepared. And the last phase is the closing phase. And during this phase, you want to try to make sure that you summarize the major points that were covered. Review the skills as they fit the job needs, and make sure that you allow the interviewer to ask questions. If you're the interviewer, you want them to ask you questions. So then you say, well, do you have any questions for me? And also thank each other for the time spent. I appreciate the fact that you gave me this time to interview you today. And also as an interviewee, you should say, and I appreciate the time that you took to interview me and the fact that you showed interest in me to interview me for this position. And also this is a time where you would ask about follow-up, like what steps you should take to follow up with them, or what steps you are going to take to follow up with them. But make sure that you try to include any of that in this particular closing phase. So now we're going to move on to how we should use questions effectively during the interview. So there are a lot of interview question types. So we're going to go briefly over some varied question types. The first question type that we're going to talk about is the open-ended question. The open-ended questions will allow for any possible answers that we should try to maintain them as job-related. So basically, you just ask open-ended questions like, tell me about yourself, or why did you leave your other company? Or tell me about what motivates you to want to work in this field. So those are all open-ended questions. Then there's another type of interview question, which is called the hypothetical open question. And then the hypothetical questions are questions that you make up a situation about a specific interest or area, and you should always try to keep the answers job related. So basically, you just make up a hypothetical situation and you see how the interviewee can play into the particular question that you ask, and hopefully they will have the ability to make it job related and give a great example of the question that you are asking. The next type is called the direct questions. And in the direct questions, they require a short answer of either yes or no. So those are the types of direct questions and the type of answers that should be given. The next one is the closed question. And closed questions are multiple choice questions with answer choices that are also included in your question. Like if you would say, like, what type of company do you prefer to work for? Do you prefer a large, a medium, or a small company? So those are closed questions because the answers are already included. All you simply have to do is answer the question with one of those particular question answers that they gave you, and then elaborate on it a little bit. The next type of question is a loaded question. And loaded questions are usually trap questions. And definitely they are designed to make you emotional or to feel emotional. So perhaps you said in one of the questions that sometimes I feel that I'm a very difficult person to get along with. So then a loaded question would be, so are you still difficult to get along with? That's a loaded question. So then that's going to entail you having to really do some deep thought, and I'm sure that it's going to stir up some emotions within you. But try your best to answer the loaded question. The next question is a leading question, and leading questions imply the correct answer and are often used to see if you are going to be an honest person or a yes person, answering a question basically like in a way of yes, yes, of course, yes, yes, yes. So basically the leading question would start out like something like you see here already. I don't think you've been working up to your potential. What do you think? So basically, you know, your boss is asking you this question, and then they want to know, what do you think? So you giving the answer, basically your boss has already let you know what the question is, but really in actuality, the boss is also making a statement related to the things that they see within you. So when they ask, I don't think that you've been working up to your potential. What do you think? That's definitely a leading question. The next question is the third person question. And they are phrased basically involving, like I said, a third person to make embarrassing or personal questions feel less threatening. So basically, it could be something that could be very embarrassing, but depending on the way you phrase the question, it could be less intimidating or less embarrassing. So basically, it's kind of like a way of playing like, you tell me what you think about this particular person. So basically, like this first question, it says, what does your group think about the latest merger proposal? So basically, it's asking a third person, which would be basically, what does your group think about it? So it's not between me and you, it's about the group. So like instead of like embarrassing you per se and say, so what do you think about the latest merger? They try to involve or bring in a third person so that it doesn't put it all on you. And maybe perhaps it's not as embarrassing if you answer quote unquote for the group. Another type of interview question that we're going to talk about, and this is basically the last one that we're going to talk about today, and it's called the verbal and nonverbal probes. And they are used to encourage a longer or more detailed question, or answer from the person that you are interviewing. So you would say, well, tell me more about when blah, blah, blah. Or you can say, really? And that leads them to want to say more. You say, I see, or, So, or what do you mean by that? Why do you feel that way? That's interesting. So those are just types of probes or like just words that can lead the person into knowing that you want more from them. So they're just like probes, and it's used to encourage more dialogue. So those are the types of interview questions that we have discussed today. And now we're going to talk about how do you, as an interviewee, answer these questions? So basically, you need to practice so that you can feel relaxed and you can be yourself. I mean, if you've already practiced the questions, you know what type of answer you're going to give. So now you can just feel relaxed. You just answer them. And if you don't know or remember something, say it. Just say, you know, I really don't remember ever having to miss work for being tardy, or I never remember having to be at home because I broke bones at work, or, you know, just whatever. If you really don't know or you really don't understand or whatever, just say so. And then make sure you don't say more than you want to say. And definitely listen carefully to what the question really is before you answer it. So another part of answering questions correctly, when asked direct questions, make sure that you watch the interviewer's face. Short or long answers are desired. So you can look at their face and you can tell whether or not they want you to give them a short answer, or sometimes they want a long answer, especially if you hear those verbal probes, like, really? Or tell me more. And don't let closed questions limit your answer. Just because the answer is like a closed question, you know, maybe you can profoundly add more to it so that you can demonstrate your abilities or your skills. Be aware of leading questions and avoid answers saying stuff like just yes or no. Be aware that the third-party questions are aimed at getting you to say more. So you just basically have to follow the lead. You can tell if the person that's interviewing you really wants more information. So you have to learn to very carefully listen. So those are the things that we have discussed from Chapter 7. So let's move on to Chapter 8, the employment interview. In this chapter, we're going to be discussing some certain things to help you prepare for an interview and things to help you watch for during the interview. Or if you are going to be interviewing someone, what you should be doing. So now, as an interviewee, you have to definitely be prepared for the job hunt. And I cannot tell you how important this particular phase is. You should definitely investigate the employment market. It is key to helping you find the job that you really want. So it shows here some job hunting success rates in the percentages that they were successful. So if you basically like just look on the internet per se, like just do like a Google search or whatever, you will only be 6 to 7% successful. If you look on the internet job board, you'll be 4 to 10% successful. As you can see, it continues to rise with every particular thing that you're doing to investigate the employment market. As you can see, networking or informational interviews lead you to be successful 86% of the time. If you really want to know about a particular job that you want, or you really have an interest in a particular job, the best way to do it would be to go to someone who is personally or presently working in that particular job and do an informational interview. Ask them questions about the job. What do you like best about your job? What's the hardest thing about doing your job? Those types of things really help you to network, talking to someone who's already in the field, and they have proved to be 86% effective or even successful when it comes to it. So you've been doing this for 10 years. How did you get into the company? And they will tell you, well, do you think you could put a word in for me? And there you go. you interviewed the person and they were impressed with the type of questions you asked, they could tell the boss, this person would be perfect for this job. Just by doing an interview and just by asking questions so that you can get the answer to see if this is perhaps the type of job that you want to do. Another thing that is key for preparing for the job hunt is preparing a quality resume. Remember that resumes are a way of communicating with your prospective employer. If you are an interviewer, you are definitely looking at the resume to help find your prospective employee. Or if you are preparing your resume, make sure that you are aware that you are trying to communicate with your prospective employer. So preparing a quality resume is very important. Resumes can confer an advantage, but must be good, and I emphasize good, to grab the attention of the person that is reading it. And make sure that before you send your resume out, check the resume content for accuracy and honesty. It is so crucial that you take the time to do that. So, make sure that you understand how important preparing a quality resume really is. Along with that quality resume, you need to prepare a letter of application, or in other words, a cover letter. And it should give enough information to interest an employer in talking with you personally. So when you prepare your letter of application, make sure that you include all the vital information that is necessary so that that person will be just intrigued by just reading it and really want to talk to you further. So, if you're the interviewee and you're preparing for an interview, make sure that you remember to prepare yourself mentally and physically. Talk to yourself. Do some positive self-talk. Do what it takes. Prepare for your interview. And definitely dress for the occasion. You should always come dressed for the occasions when you're ready to have your interview. Second, when you're going to be in the middle of the interview and you're answering questions, make sure you do some of the following. Use active, positive, concrete language. Describe your weaknesses and disabilities in a positive light. Support answers with specific examples that are job related. It is so important for you to remember that. You want to make sure that your answers are definitely job related. Only use humor when it's appropriate. Don't just make something funny during the whole interview and you can tell by the faces of the people, maybe perhaps you're doing a group interview, that don't find your type or particular type of humor as funny. So make sure that you use it when it's appropriate. And also make sure when you are preparing for your interview, make sure you have questions to ask the interviewer. When the interviewer comes to a point in the interview and they say, well, do you have any questions for me? Please do not respond, no, I don't. I really appreciate you interviewing me and I really don't have any questions. I think you answered all of them. You should always, I repeat, always have a question to ask. Now, after the interview, it is your responsibility as the interviewee to send a thank you letter. Make sure you do that. And if needed, send a follow-up letter. But make sure you do something to just thank the person for taking the time to interview you. Now we're going to move on from the perspective of an interviewee to that of an interviewer. That is the person who is conducting the interview. So as an interviewer, you have responsibilities, and your responsibilities include, of course, Contact the interviewee before the interview, which would be very important. Plan the environment so that, it's well lit and it feels homey and it feels welcoming. And organize the interview carefully. Of course, you have your opening, your question response area, and then also the closing. We went over that during chapter 7. But yes, these are things that you as an interviewer should be definitely responsible for and should have to be prepared for it. Make sure you listen carefully to the interviewee, and clarify and verify their responsibilities, and also clarify and verify that you are following the responsibilities that you have. And if you have a question about a response that the interviewee gave, make sure that you ask them for it. So, are you saying that blah, blah, blah? Make sure that you ask, so that way you definitely have clarity. Remember also, as an interviewer, that there are lawful questions that you need to answer. You need to ask the interviewee. And all those questions must be related to the job that they are going to be doing. And remember that the same basic questions must be asked of all applicants. So remember that. Here are a list of unlawful questions that you by law are not supposed to be asking anyone on a job interview. So anyway, be aware of those. And if you are, as an interviewee, asked those questions, those unlawful questions during the interview, here are some answers that you should give, and from the most effective to the least effective answers you should give. So make sure you take time in and read those. So now we have finished chapter 7 and chapter 8, and I just want to leave you with a couple of really important things that I drew from both chapters. The first one is that a warm, friendly smile and handshake leave a good and lasting impression. Like we had said earlier, make sure you make contact or direct contact with your eyes with people that are interviewing you. It's like a way of saying, I'm listening to you, I care, I'm a very attentive person. The next thing I want to tell you is that the initial 1 to 4 minutes, imagine just the first 1 to 4 minutes of the interview may be the most important of the entire interview. So you want to make a very good impression, a lasting impression. You want to be the person that gets called back and ultimately get the job. The last thing I want to leave you with is that a resume has approximately 45 seconds to grab the attention of the reader, or it will just be tossed aside. So that was why I was telling you the importance of being able to prepare your resume in a very good form, because it's something that's going to be representing you, and you want to be represented in the best possible light. So those are the things I really want us to walk away with after reading chapters 7 and 8. And that's all I have for you today. I hope that you have a great week and a very productive week. And you will hear from me again on Saturday. Have a good day, and make sure you take that time that you need to address the discussion question for the video so that you can get your extra credit attendance points. Thank you very much, and if you have any questions, make sure you contact me. Have a great day.